Please like, subscribe if you enjoy our content. Let's get to this fight night.
Yeah, let's get to this fight night. Prelims, a couple fights to keep an eye out for.
Yeah.
Rodolfo Vieira versus Tresean Gore could be fun. Probably won't be. And then on the undercard, Neil Magny versus Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos. You know, always got to tune in when Neil Magny fights. He gets a lot of decisions, but he's usually getting knocked around the ring at some point and comes back. So keep an eye out for that. And then Elves Brener versus Esteban Ribovics. We know Ribovics will put on a great fight. He had that, I just was talking about a couple weeks ago. He had that fight of the year candidate with Daniel Zellhuber at UFC Noche. So, and then he's gone on to get a couple wins since, I believe. So that's a fun fight. There was obviously the UFC doesn't care about this card either. They can't even update their bout order on their website. They have
We're not sure
the wrong main event. They have the wrong main event because Albazi has pulled out with an undisclosed injury, which we'll talk about who his replacement is. That's not changed on the UFC website. And they also have a different bout order than every other website you would go to see such things. So Mateusz Rebecki versus Chris Duncan.
Yeah.
That's probably a fun fight. A couple of Dana White Contender Series guys. That could possibly be co-main event. But we're going to go with Karol Rosa versus Nora Cornolle. I think that's how it's pronounced.
Yeah, no, I looked at it first and I thought it was cornhole real quick.
It's French, so it's probably different than that. But
yes. Her nickname's Wonder, by the way. Having to use a different site today, I did get some of these people's nicknames, so that was fun. Nora's 9-2, 6 KOs, 2 subs, 1 decision, 3-1 in the UFC, which is fun. Like how many, of the female fighters in the lower weight classes have that kind of finish rate? So we'll see if that plays a factor. Karol, though, 18-7, 4 KOs, 2 subs, 12 decisions. Just the opposite, but she's 7-4 in the UFC, so she's had a lot more UFC fights. I'm gonna go with experience. I'll go with Rosa, and I will go by decision, but we shall see. I'm kind of pulling for Nora though.
Yeah, terrible co-main. Nora's 35 with 11 fights. Her biggest test was Jacqueline Cavalcanti, which she lost a split decision to.
I can't believe she had 11 fights in the UFC.
No, 11 total fights.
Yeah, I know.
Karol's been around the UFC for a long time, like you said. She's consistently wins one and loses one. Her last fight was a loss, so I'm going to pick her to win. She's a decision machine, though, so I'm betting she wins by decision over an
She's had 11 fights in the UFC.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, way more fights. So, all right, let's move on to our new main event. This actually, I think, may be an upgrade from our original main event here. So, Hyun-sung Park versus Tatsuro Taira.
Taira 16-1, 5 KOs, 7 subs, 4 decisions, 6-1 in UFC, coming off his first loss to Brandon Royval in a 5-round decision loss. No shame in that whatsoever. Park 10-0, 4 KOs, 5 subs, 1 decisions, and so he's 3-0 in the UFC with all finishes. So this is fun because this is a big opportunity for Park here. Obviously this is not a card that's going to get a lot of press and it stinks and we've already kind of shit on it. But for Park, this is a great opportunity to get this main event. I don't know why. I'm going to go with Park because I think he, especially on short notice, I'd say probably should lose this by decision, but I think he's going to find a way to win this. And I'll say he'll get a 3rd round TKO finish because sometimes these guys on short notice, they get so motivated for a fight like this and they stay in shape, and he's undefeated. This is a great opportunity for him.
Yeah, also last minute replacement could throw off any game plan that Taira had. So
who's coming off his first loss, even though it's a very game opponent. Yeah.
Both guys relatively unknown, but they're both finishers in a division that seriously lacks finishing. So I think it's going to be an exciting fight. I'm not overly confident either way. Like you said, momentum definitely on Park's side. But I'm a fan of Taira for sure. So I'm going to pick him by TKO. I'll say 4th round TKO for Taira.